Hello there, my lovely jewelry makers. I'm Christina of CSLdesigns, and today I'm going to show you how to make these wire knitted beaded earrings. Now they're pretty quick and easy to make, so if you want to learn how to, then keep watching. So these are the materials that we're going to need. Now first of all, the wire that I'm using is a 0.4mm silver coated copper wire. And the beads that I'm then adding into this are these 6mm rounds here. Now both 6mm and 5mm will work fine for this design. And finally, I have my findings as well, so I have some jump rings to be able to attach my finished braids to the earring findings. Now I'm using an earring post and butterfly back, but of course you can use whatever you prefer. Now as for the tools, I'm using this wire knitting spool here. This is the artistic wire one, and it has 6 prongs. Now what I also like to do is I just attached a little piece of scrap wire around one of them there, just a random one to begin with. It's just so I can keep track of the rounds, so where I start a round and where I finish a round. So that's just personal preference. And then to be able to move the wire on the spool here, I'm personally using a crochet hook. Now this specific one is 4mm, but it doesn't have to be that, that just happens to be the one that I'm using. It can get in there, but it's also not too small. Also, make sure you check out the description box below the video. You're going to be able to find the material list and some links as well that might be useful. Otherwise, let's get all the materials and the tools ready, and let's get started. Now for this design, I'm going to be working with my wires still attached to the reel, so I'm not cutting off any lengths here, because it can be very hard to know exactly how much you're going to need, and I'd rather not run out. So my wire is attached to the reel, but before I start using it here, I have an open end obviously, and I'm going to then take my beads that I've already taken off the strand, and before we start making any braid or anything, we need to start adding them to the length of wire, obviously while the wire is still attached to the reel. So I'm just stranding them on here one at a time, and I know that I'm going to be using 8 beads per earring, so I've just added my first 8 beads onto the length, and you're just going to simply let them drop all the way down for now and just sit by the reel there, so they're kind of out of the way and they're not going to fall off. Because to begin with, I'm just going to start using the wire here, and we're going to make a short section before we actually start adding in the beads. So we want to get a wire knitting spool out here and the open end of our wire. Now what I'm going to do to get started is put this wire down through the hole at the top, put it all the way through to come out of the bottom here, and just leave it with a short little tail at the bottom, just to kind of hold on to and be able to pull at it a little bit. Now, like I mentioned, I have this scrap piece of wire, so I know that I just want to start here, just so I know when to do a complete round. Now that means the way to get started is by taking the length here coming out from the middle, and I'm going to focus on this prong to be the first one with the wire on. Bring it around, wrap it around from the right, around the front, and then around the left to come towards the back again, or the middle you could say, and then it's coming directly towards the next prong to the right of it. Again, go on the outside, the right side of that, around the front, and then around the left again to come to the back, and then you cross over the back side of the 2 to go around and do the next one. So you can see we're basically doing little loops around each one, working our way all the way around the spool, doing one at a time. And now you can see that I've reached the one where I started out. Now obviously right now it's obvious because that's the one that's already wire on there, but once we get further in, it's handy to have that scrap piece of wire in place. Now we need to do this whole first round first of all to get started. Now what we need to do is basically repeat, but we now need to start making the braiding as well, you could say. So I'm just going to continue. I'm going to go around the first one again, making sure this wrap or the loop goes above the first one. You can see there. And then now this is where we want to start bringing in the crochet hook that I'm using in this case. Now I like to bring my length of wire over towards the next one and kind of keep hold of it. Then you want to take the crochet hook and bring it in underneath the bottom of the 2 wires. You can see right now the only prong we have 2 wires around is this one here that we're working with. So I take my crochet hook and bring the bottom wire out a little bit, because we just need to bring it out enough so I can bring it up over the prong and let it basically go into the middle. You can see here it's loose in the middle, right there. And that is, you could say, the first movement, and that's basically what we're going to be repeating from now on. I'm just going to leave it a little bit there for now. The next one, you already know because you put the wire in place. The next one, going to bring it all the way around that next one, making sure that goes above the first one that was already there, so you have a gap between them. And then I leave my wire to be ready for the next prong, grab hold of it, take my crochet hook, grab hold of the bottom one of the two loops, making sure the other one stays on the prong. I then bring the bottom one over it and into the middle, like that. And then just basically keep repeating, doing one at a time, making sure that that new loop that we just made stays on the prong. Bring it around and make sure you just pull the wire out a little bit of the bottom one to then be able to bring it up and over and into the middle. So you can start to see it building up here in the middle. And we're making our way around. And I'm pretty sure, you can see here, I'm almost back at the beginning. Into the middle, and now I can see I'm back at the very first prong, because that's where I have my scrap piece of wire. So I now made one full round, bringing the wire there into the middle, or the loops rather, into the middle. And I want to keep doing this, so I'm now starting another round. I'm still not adding beads in because I just want a little length of braid here before I do that. So I'm just going to do a few rounds like this. We can start seeing the work building up there in the middle. So I've now made 4 rounds here, and I know I've made 4 full rounds, and I'm not counting the initial round where I just made the first loops there. I'm only counting the rounds where I brought the loops in over the prongs into the middle there. And you can also see in the middle the braid is starting to form. And if you pull a little bit at the wire on the bottom, you can see it moving there. But I don't want to pull too hard as of yet, because I kind of like to maneuver the braid once I've made it and kind of get it to look how I want it to. But I finished where I have that scrap piece of wire, so I know that the next round I'm going to start is going to be my 5th one. And now I also want to start adding beads in. So first of all, I'm just going to make the first loop here in the new round. So this is my 5th round. Bring the wire out and over, and now to add in a bead. This is also where I find it handy using the scrap piece of wire, because I can use that to reference where I'm adding the beads in. If you're just adding beads in some places and not all around, obviously, for some designs. But before then bringing the wire around for the next loop, I then want to bring one bead up, let it drop into the middle here to sit basically between those 2 prongs, but behind them, and then make sure it stays there. And then you bring the wire around the next prong, basically the same movement, same technique. We've now just added that bead in between the prongs, and to fasten it in place you just do the same movement with your loop, bring it out and the wire back in over into the middle, and then your bead is going to end up sitting right there, incorporate it into the braid. Now I'm just going to be adding beads right here the whole way, basically on one side of it. So for the rest of this round, I'm just going to continue bringing the loops over the prongs and into the middle without adding any more beads in. All the way around till I get to that scrap piece of wire, so I know I completed the round. I think this is the last one by the looks of it for the current 5th round that I'm doing, like that. And now this next one here will start round 6. Now, like I said, I'm going to be adding beads here every time, but not on every round. What I'm going to do now is a round without adding beads in, just to create a little bit of space in between them. So that means I'm going to start the next round like this, but then just continue in the same way without worrying about a bead or anything. And you can see this wire is now going to end up laying basically right on top of the bead. Just there. So this round you just want to continue just like this here. So you can see I completed my 6th round here because I made it back to my scrap piece of wire. And then I'm going to start the next round, which is going to be the 7th one. So I do the first movement, first loop here, bring it out and over. And then obviously you can also see where the bead was before, but I know also that it's between these 2 prongs now that I want to add a bead, because I just did a round without a bead. That means the next round is going to be with a bead. So basically alternating now, 1 round with a bead, 1 round without, and so on, alternate between the 2. So I add a bead in, you can see it drops right into that very same spot between the 2 prongs. Keep it there, then make your loop around the next prong. Get it to stay there obviously. It's going to keep the bead in place. And then bring the loop, the bottom loop of the 2 for the next prong here, out and over and into the middle. And you can then see we now have 2 beads sitting basically right next to each other or above each other depending how you look at it. And this round I just continue again without adding any more beads in, because I'm just adding 1 bead per round on every other round. So that means working my way along here until I get to the end of this round, which I think I'm almost there. So just do the last one. If you find sometimes that your wire slips off the prongs, just place it back on before pulling at the wire or anything and bring it out of shape. So the last one in this round, and I'm back to the beginning of the next round, which is now a round where we need to not add a bead in. So as you can see, that wire here, once we get past the first prong, it's just going to lay right on top of the bead. So you just want to keep going like this, adding a bead in every other round in this very same space until I've used up all the beads. Now I just finished the round here where I added my last bead in, and I've got to the point you can see I have my scrap piece of wire, and the next prong will be starting a new round. So I also just wanted to show you, you can see the braid starting to come out at the bottom here. And you get that effect. You can also see how the bead is going to be sitting inside the braid. And now I do pull a little bit every now and then on this length of wire. Not hard, just to kind of help the braid come down through this whole spool. But then I just added in my last bead, like I said. Now I want to continue making more rounds because just like in the beginning, we have a section with no beads. I want to basically have the same at the end. So I'm just going to start another round. And again, I'm now not going to add any beads in. And I'm just going to do the same amount of rounds as I did in the beginning. So I'm just going to do 4 full rounds here without any beads. So now I made my 4 rounds here. It's time to start finishing it off. So we're going to do that by making another round, but in the process we're going to start finishing it off and get it off of this spool here. So first of all, before I start the round, I'm going to cut off my wire from the reel. Now I'm just going to leave a bit of a length, maybe about 5 to 10 centimeters, more like 10 or so. Now we're kind of going to start another round, but it's not going to be exactly the same. So the first prong that I need to deal with now is the first one in the next round here. What I'm going to do is I'm not going to bring this wire around the prong. I'm going to take the wire, the loop that is already on the prong, and then bring that up and over into the middle. But then what I'm going to do, keeping the crochet hook in there, don't worry too much about it if it slips out, it's wired so it keeps its shape. But then what I'm going to do is take this length take the hook and then bring the wire through the loop. So it's now coming out through the loop there. It kind of grabs onto it. Now the next one, same thing. Kind of like to keep my finger on the inside here as well, holding on to everything. We release the loop from the prong. I kind of turn my crochet hook to be able to, as I come back out through the loop, I grab the wire and bring it with me. Like that. And you basically just do this all the way around, releasing one prong at a time and making sure to bring the loose end of the wire here through the loops, because that then catches all the loops and it just finishes it off securely. So no part of the braid here is going to come undone. Just working my way around. I've only got a few left. Get that up and over, and then pull the wire back through. And the last one, release the prong and bring the wire through. And now we have a braid off of the prong. So we can just take this out, bring it through here, put the prong or the spool out of the way. And then we have this. Now what I just like to do is the very end here, so this end of the wire, I like to just kind of continue through a couple more loops. So basically the beginning ones that we already went through, but just bring it through a couple of them again. Just so it's not just gone through them once. Just a bit like this here. And in the same direction. So there we go. And now what we can do is, you can see the bottom down here has kind of been pulled tight together. Up here we can do the same. So you just kind of bring your loops close in and then you pull on this while holding onto this softly, so we don't squish this. Pulling this and it brings the end and kind of closes it up and makes it more like the beginning basically. So we now here have our length of braid with our beads all basically in a line along one side. Now before I do any more with this, I like to make the other one as well, because obviously these are going to be earrings, so we need to make two of these. So I like to just make the other braid before I move on to the next step. So now I made both of my braids here, as you can see, and we got the beads running down one side on both of them, and I have the same amount of beads as well. So now we need to do the next step, which is to kind of settle the braid a little bit more and stretch it out as well, because right now it's a little bit too chunky, and you can see we can kind of barely shape it around. Obviously if you like this and you prefer this, then by all means just leave it like this, but I like to kind of stretch it out a bit and settle the braid in a bit. So what I'm going to do is just start in one place and just gently kind of squeeze it a little bit first of all. Now I'm not doing this particularly hard, I'm just doing it gently, just so I feel like there's a little bit of movement going on, going all the way across, and you can also kind of pull at it a little bit and gently stretch it more and more. And then I also like to roll it, so you can put it between your hands and just start rolling it a bit. Again, I'm not squishing it very flat or anything, because obviously it is fine wire. I'm just gently rolling it all the way along, which helps it also settle in a bit more and stretch it out this way. So just keep doing that a bit. You can also put it down on the surface and roll it out, and you can see I'm still making sure it's keeping the round shapes of the tube, so I don't just want to go in and push down a lot, because that would kind of flatten it out. But you basically just want to keep doing this until you're happy with how it then looks, and you can keep kind of bringing it around into that teardrop shape to see how it looks. And obviously once you've done the first one, You can then use that when you do the second one, compare the second one to the first one so you get them in as even as possible. So once you're happy with both the braids here, then it's time to shape them. And the only thing you got to make sure of is, obviously the beads are on just one side there, all the way along. So I just want to make sure that that's on the outside of the teardrop shape. So facing away, so basically you can see them there, kind of from the bottom and the sides. So that's just making sure, as I'm shaping it, the beads are sitting there. You can still see them through the braid, obviously, because you get that and the effect of them almost floating inside. But then you have these two ends of the wire left, one on either end. Now, you then also have kind of a bunch of loops up here, which is how we both started and finished off the braid. So what I'm going to do is the wire from one side, I'm going to take through to the other end and kind of go through some of these loops and pull it like that. And then the other one, I'm going to go through the opposite side in the same way and basically connect them like this. And then just want to pull them close together. You can see that's going to kind of make the point of the teardrop shape. And now I'm holding on to this. It's a matter of basically using these lengths to wrap with. So we get a little bit of a, almost a bit like a bail up here. So making sure that they are close together. And you can also squeeze them a little bit together if you need to. Then I'm going to take, this is coming out towards the side, I'm going to bring it around the top and back in the same direction, put it through, making sure to go through these loops on the ends of the braids, and then come out basically in the same place that it's coming out from. And then pull that tight. And I'm going to be doing this a few times. So bring it around and kind of making little wraps here next to each other. And then of course you also want to take the other wire and do the same but in the opposite direction. So we're just bringing the ends here through the braid to connect the ends together to get that teardrop shape, and so they're fastened, and also to make it nice and secure. So you just want to do this a few times until you're happy with how it looks and how they're fastened together, so they're not going to obviously pull apart. When you then have your wires wrapped around enough times here, you can see it's nice and secure and it's keeping its shape. Then you want to now finish off the ends of the wires. So I've kind of continued my wire as if it was going to do another wrap, but I haven't brought it through because I want to cut off the end, but then the excess here, but then tuck away the end of the wire, because obviously we don't want that sticking out and catching or scratching and also maybe unraveling. So I'm going to cut off the excess but leave a little tail like that. That can then take my chain nose, grab onto that, and then kind of bring it inwards towards the braid, and then make sure to squeeze it in place. Just push it in. So it's basically going to nestle in between all these other wires and not be sticking out so it can't catch or scratch on anything. Of course, you want to do the same with the other side. Nice and secure. Just bend it inwards and then tuck it away. And obviously, once you've done that, you just want to make sure you run your finger over them to make sure you can't feel the end sticking out. But then, once you've done that, you'll then also find, because you wrapped around up here so many times with the ends of the wires there, you kind of created a little bit of a space or a little bit of an opening, which you're then going to use to attach to the earring findings. But of course, first you just have to do the other one as well to get it to match this. So to attach your earring findings, you want to grab one of your braids and then open one of your jump rings, and then you want to feed it through up at the tips here, basically where we attach the two ends together that we just did. And you can see you kind of get it through just nicely. And of course you also want to then remember to add the actual earring finding itself onto the jump ring. And then you want to just close it up. So just close it all the way around these wraps that we've done, which is where I mentioned that it almost becomes like a little bail. Make sure that jump ring is closed nicely. It'll be just a little bit hard to get the pliers in there. There we go. And then you have your earring finding attached, and obviously this one is ready, so you just want to do the same with the other one. Attach your earring finding. You can see they dangle nicely, and you have this teardrop shape with braid, and the beads are just kind of floating inside of it and just more peeking out on one side of the braid. So I hope you enjoyed the tutorial for these wire knitted earrings with the floating beads inside. Thank you so much for watching it, and I'll see you in the next one.